Hello there. What is going on, everybody? We got Armada on the Star Wars show. Huge group effort from the entire community. So big thanks to everybody that participated in this. It was a pretty big deal. So if you're not familiar, last week the Star Wars show asked us what are you most looking forward to from Star Wars in 2019, and to use the hashtag Star Wars 2019. I tweeted this, which they then featured on the show, but one of the things that really made this work is that so many people tweeted. Usually if a lot of people tweet about the same thing, they don't show necessarily everybody's tweets, but they got such a response. This was the first tweet they showed, and they said it wasn't just, sometimes they'll say, oh, well, so-and-so tweeted this, so-and-so tweeted. And they said a lot of people tweeted about this. So, and it was awesome to see Armada, the Superstar Destroyer release, Armada news featured on a platform as big as the Star Wars show. I was giggling like a schoolgirl for a little bit. The funny thing about this is my Twitter handle has always been @Crabbok, but you also set a name, and my name was Crabbok, holder of the sacred lightsaber nunchucks, or something like that. And apparently that was too long for their user interface, or they just didn't like it for whatever reason. So as Anthony Carboni was reading this on the Star Wars show, it's last week's episode. I'll put a link to it, but it's at about the 7-minute mark, somewhere around there. When he's reading it, he says, like, you can tell something was on the teleprompter, and he's just like, I'm not saying that. So he just called me Awesome Face. And that's what they wrote on their thing. So my name was not Awesome Face, but I think that's how good nicknames are given to us. We don't get to pick them, so I changed my Twitter name to Awesome Face now. So if you're wondering why I'm now Awesome Face, that came from the Star Wars show. So I'm going to call myself Awesome Face now. I'm still @Crabbok, so you'll still find me as Crabbok. But yeah, so that was pretty funny. But yeah, a lot of you guys tweeted this. I mean, if you click the hashtag Star Wars 2019, you're gonna see a lot of stuff, and it's like every third one is something about Armada. So that is speaking volumes about how much community support there is out there for this game that a lot of people think is dead. It's not even close, and now it's getting featured on one of the biggest Star Wars news outlets in the world. So it's a big deal. It's a really big deal, guys. You did good. You did really good. So, that being said, let's talk some more about the Superstar Destroyer, because we're probably going to be getting some news here pretty soon, and I've got to get through. I got a lot of previews to talk about. There's a lot of stuff that I still haven't talked about yet. So, today we're going to talk about Admiral Ozzel. Cheap officer does something kind of cool, right? So we're going to talk about this. Also, there is still time to enter to win the lightsaber giveaway. I'm giving away a Force FX lightsaber. All you have to do is be a subscriber, leave a comment. And I have more details for that on Crabbok.com, but that's running throughout the rest of the month. All right, Admiral Ozzel is a 2-cost officer for the Empire. He says at the start of the first round, you may execute a speed 1 maneuver. Pretty straightforward. I don't have to explain to you very much about how that works. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? But there's a lot of subtleties and intricacies to this. So first thing I'm going to talk about, what is he really going to work with in the Superstar Destroyer expansion? Well, naturally, he's going to work on any slow ship to give them an extra speed maneuver. So that's like the first thing that I'm drawn to. I'm thinking, okay, well, he can, Superstar Destroyers are slow. So he's going to give you an extra little, well, boom, you can deploy like a little bit farther out, get closer to the middle of the board first. That's great. For non-Superstar Destroyer ships, he's good for maybe if you had a deployment disadvantage and you didn't get your ships pointed the way you wanted to point them. Some ships with that can take a click on the speed 1 can now maybe reposition a little bit. So that's nice. Ships that are really slow, like the Superstar Destroyer, like maybe say a Victory. Victory now gets a little bit of a speed boost there because they get an extra speed maneuver. So there's a lot of little things like that they can be very useful for. Ships that have lots of turning ability at speed 1 can also take advantage of this. Like your Architans, for example, can now completely, well, one of them can completely reposition at the start of the first round. So that can help you, again, usually in those cases where you had some kind of deployment disadvantage. So what else can you do with this guy? Well, first off, he's an officer. He's an upgrade. And he's only used one time at the beginning of the game. You don't have to discard him, though. And so if you factor that into other cards that come with the Superstar Destroyer, for example, Darth Vader Officer, sacrifice, choking out other officers to get rerolls, well, that's perfect. So now, all of a sudden, Ozzel does two things. So you're definitely going to want Ozzel and Vader together in the same build. You don't necessarily need them on the same ship, though. You want Ozzel on a ship that probably has lots of red dice, right? That's a good option. At least that's an option. Or in theory, black dice, possibly, or maybe red and black dice. But yeah, you definitely want Ozzel on a ship that can take advantage of those rerolls. So Darth Vader definitely lets you do that. And Darth Vader does not have to be on the same ship because he is, he can just be any friendly ship. So that's cool. That is a very cool thing. If you're playing a sector fleet battle, Darth Vader could even be on an allied ship that's owned by somebody else. So that's cool. In a crowded game like that, actually, Ozzel's going to help you get a ship maybe out of the way so that you don't end up bumping. And I think that's one of the subtleties for Ozzel too that's going to help, is if you find yourself having to deploy in cramped circumstances, he can help you maybe not have to bump all the time. Because that has happened to me a lot, especially when I'm playing a lot of Architans. They sometimes get close together, and I'm like, oh, I have to do this one first, otherwise they're all going to bump. So he gives you a free move, and now you have a little maybe flexibility in your formation. Now, as far as commanders, I think he's going to work really, really well with Moff Jerjerrod, because during a friendly ship's determined course step, it can suffer damage to change the yaw up to speed 2 for their for their first thing. So now, let's start with the Superstar Destroyer, right? Now, all of a sudden, you can do a speed 2 or a 2 yaw speed 1 maneuver for the cost of 1 damage, which could be a shield or something. So that's really, really cool. That allows you to reposition a Superstar Destroyer, and I think that's going to be a really strong way. Like, if you're going to run Ozzel on a Superstar Destroyer, I think your commander of choice for that type would probably be Jerjerrod. Because now all of a sudden you don't have to nav as much. So that's pretty cool. I like that idea. It's a pretty cool idea. But now it's important to point out that Jerjerrod triggers during the determined course step. And every time a ship moves, it does determined course step as part of movement. And that's where you're lining up the maneuver template. And then moving the ship comes after that. Determine the course step doesn't have to be during your activation. So anytime you move, you have a determined course step. Other abilities that might seem like they would work with this, like engine text, like after you move, can move again, is not going to work, because that one requires you to be doing the navigation command. And you can only do commands during your activation. So until that changes, this is one of those only move things that you'll really be able to do with somebody like Ozzel. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, defensively, or counterplay, I should say, if you're going up against some interdictors that are running G7X Gravwell projectors, kind of a cool little thing is, even though if you set your stuff to 0, I don't think there's anything stopping you from following the rules on the card text and performing a speed 1 maneuver with Ozzel, even if you're at speed 0. Not like that's really game breaking, but I think that's kind of worth pointing out, because it seems like you can do that. And if you do end up getting stuck in a thing where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be stuck, I'm gonna have to nav this first turn, and then I'm gonna have to, then I can increase to speed 1, but I'm still gonna be slow. Well, that lets you kind of get out in front of this problem a little bit and engage maybe just a little bit quicker. So I think that's worth pointing out. Some potential build ideas outside of Superstar Destroyers, because I don't think Ozzel's the best for a Superstar Destroyer, but he's certainly not bad, is maybe running an Architans class command cruiser. A lot of times people will run these with engine text, and that just makes sense. But if you're running a command cruiser more as a carrier, and you're running maybe a squadron heavy build with Lambdas and Centaur, or either or, I like fighter coordination teams, right? Because it's like, that's just a really cool card, because it's giving you free squadron movement after you move, and that one is another one of those things that does not have to be while you are doing a command, so it can trigger outside of your actual turn. So what Fighter Coordinations is saying, after you execute a maneuver, you may select a number of unengaged friendly squadrons up to your squadron value at close to medium range. Those squadrons may move up to distance 1. And so in this case, you'll be able to activate that Fighter Coordination team twice. Why is this a big deal? Well, this would be a bigger deal if it was on the Rebel side, because you could, kind of push those B-Wings a little bit further because they're really, really slow. Well, if the Empire ever gets really, really slow squadrons, like a Speed 1 or Speed 2, bomber or something like that, this will be really nice for that because you can move them a little bit farther right out the gate. But also with lambdas. Lambdas are, have strategic, and then they can move objective tokens around whenever they move. Well, Architans, so basically you're creating like a chain of events here. So ideally, if you put Ozzel on the Architans command cruiser with Fighter Coordination teams and lambdas, you can basically get a free move at the beginning, trigger Fighter Coordination teams, move 2 lambdas, trigger each one of those to move some objective tokens back, and or even move the same one back twice potentially. So you can really get a lot of flexibility before the game's even started. So you can move tokens all around. There's all kinds of objectives that this could interface with. If somebody's done something like minefields or something in your face, or planetary ion cannon, whatever, you can push stuff farther away. Was this at the start of the first round? So but then again, if you're first player, if your opponent was your opponent's objective, you'll do your start around stuff before they do their start around stuff. So you could potentially dodge ion cannon shots that way. I would imagine. Now that's maybe anti-thematic because Ozzel did not dodge the ion cannon shots. But hey, they can't all be perfect. Another thing is things that are going to trigger off of movement as well. Slicer tools. Now, suppressor is not going to trigger off of your movement, but it could potentially put you in, in a better position to take advantage of that. But slicer tools. Now, when would you be using slicer tools on the first round? Because again, this is only giving you movement, right away. Well, probably not going to trigger in the first round. There is one case where it could, but generally, it's probably not. But slicer tools is cool. Remember that because we're going to talk about some objectives that'll work with this. So that's pretty cool. So let's look at some objectives. Blockade run. All right, blockade run is all about going really far or whatever. So if you're running blockade run, maybe you want to get that ship, an extra, a little head start. That makes sense. Could be helpful. Fleet ambush. Fleet ambush is really the most interesting one. I'm going to come back to that one. And then dangerous territory, I just figure that one's kind of helpful. I mean, you can start out collecting an objective right away. A lot of people will pre-measure where they want their objectives with dangerous territory so that they can potentially, collect them as fast as humanly possible. But in this case, you can spread them out even a little bit more differently, and get one right away and then get another one when you activate. So one ship can be moving more than one time on that first turn. So that's kind of cool. But let's talk about fleet ambush a little bit more. And fleet ambush is one of those ones that I think is really, really cool. So fleet ambush has this whole ambush zone. You can potentially start really, really close to some of your opponent's ships. Well, the beauty of this is that now, if you're in shooting range already, now I think Ozzel is giving you a really powerful ability. Because if you're going with fleet ambush, and also if your opponent's choosing fleet ambush and you have Ozzel, now like there's even some idea to maybe put him on a black die ship. All right, maybe you put him on an ISD 1 or a Victory 1 or something like that. Or something that wants to move before it shoots. Like Demolisher too, I can see some value in putting it on a Demolisher that already wants to take advantage of movement, but usually Demolisher is going to have engine text or some other kind of movement assist that doesn't need it as much. But let's say we start off an ambush zone, and I have maybe a black die, or let's just say I have a Kuat ISD, and I've got my black dice craziness on there. It's you know, I'm just going to do crazy, crazy things with this. And I've got Ozzel as my officer. Well, I'm going to push, maybe I'll push my my 1-star destroyer as far forward, as close to your stuff as possible. But now I get to do a move before I shoot. Granted, it's before I even activate, but it's before I shoot. Imagine I'm first player, too. Now I get to reposition and shoot. It doesn't even have to be a black die ship. I might not get a black die shot on you after doing a speed 1 move. And maybe I will. Maybe it'll put me just close enough to where after you do the move that you have to do, you know, I just have it lined up perfectly. But let's say it'll probably put me in blue dice range if I put it close enough. You know, so maybe I'm running a Simoon, and then I've got, you know, the blue dice and the red dice, or an ISD2, and with, you know, heavy ion emplacements or something like that. I mean, really, just being able to take a move before you shoot. So, you know, it just makes fleet ambush really, really dangerous for either side that happens to have Ozzel, because it's giving you a move before you shoot, and normally that's something you can only do with Demolisher, but now you can do it on any Imperial ship. Granted, this is the only objective that it's really going to be a big deal with, because again, start of first round only. With fleet ambush, first is the only objective where you're usually shooting on the first round. So I think that's a really cool thing. You know, Ozzel with fleet ambush, you can there's so many possibilities. I couldn't possibly go into, you know, every single scenario, but I want you to consider that, you know, maybe an ISD2 with gun routines, heavy ion emplacements, spinal armament, Vader as your commander, or maybe Vader as an officer on another ship, and, you know, Jerjerrod as your commander. You know, drop like a Gazanti in the ambush zone. You drop your ships, I drop somebody else, drop there, and you know, once I know where your ships are going to be, then boom, I drop that ISD as far forward in the ambush zone as possible, pointed right at your fleet, and you know, I take that first move, angle it perfectly, so maybe I'm outside of your firing, your biggest arcs, and I have gunnery time. I have 2 of your ships, both in medium range. I'm rolling 8 dice, 9 dice, got re-rolls. I mean, it could seal the game. You know, a good opening turn, and especially if I'm first player too, you don't even get to react to that Ozzel. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Like so I think it's I think it says a lot for this guy who's like only 2 points and doesn't really sound all that cool, but in the right circumstances, he could be flippin' amazing. So that's what I have to say about Admiral Ozzel. But yeah, guys, let me know what you guys think. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Hopefully, you know, we can get more Armada stuff featured on stuff like the Star Wars show, especially once this comes out. We got new stuff. We got Outer Rim coming out. We've got, you know, a whole bunch of Clone Wars stuff coming out for X-Wing. We've got, hopefully they'll announce, you know, what Clone Wars is going to be doing in Legion here pretty soon. We just got so much Star Wars tabletop news this year. The Star Wars Destiny's got a bunch of new stuff. It just keeps coming. It keeps coming. What's going to be next? What's the next thing they're going to announce? I mean, it's like, it's crazy. All right, guys, that's all I got for you today. I want to thank you all so much for watching. I want to thank my patrons on Patreon as well. You guys definitely help make this all possible. And I want to just say have a great day.